My name is Rowena Dale, and I turned 43 this spring. People at the office used to call me meticulous, never impulsive, never loud. That morning, at 8:59 and 50 seconds, I was none of those things. I was steady, watching the clock on my monitor tick toward the line I'd drawn 3 days earlier. 10 seconds. That was all it would take for Clause 6.7 to do what no argument, no resignation letter, and no HR complaint ever could. The air in my apartment was still. My laptop hummed, the cursor blinking beside a single line of text, auto-execute pending confirmation. My hand didn't shake when I pressed enter. Somewhere downtown, in a glass office I used to call mine, a system began rerouting numbers, locking portfolios, flagging discrepancies that would light up Ethan Cross's inbox like a siren. I could almost hear his voice again, calm, rehearsed, the same one he used in that meeting. Rowena, you need to set realistic expectations. You're making the rest of the team look bad. Then he smiled, the kind of managerial smile that hides a knife, and added, we'll be freezing your salary for now. Let's see if humility helps. He thought that would be the end of me. He didn't know I wrote the clause that defined how our internal loans interacted, the one nobody read because it looked too boring to matter, the one that said if a single renewal lapsed without proper authorization, the system would protect itself by erasing the author of the mistake. At 8:59 and 58 seconds, the notification appeared, execution sequence initiated. I closed my eyes and breathed once. The hum of the machine deepened, steady, obedient. When I opened them, the clock read 9 o'clock sharp. By the time Ethan's phone started ringing, I was already pouring my coffee, the kind he always said was too strong. It wasn't anger that filled me. It was relief, the quiet kind you feel when something finally snaps into place. 3 days earlier, he'd called me into his office to tell me I was the problem. That was the moment everything began. 3 days earlier, I sat in the conference room, third row from the screen, a half-empty paper cup cooling between my hands. Ethan stood at the front, sleeves rolled, voice bright enough to sound generous. We need to talk about expectations, he said, looking directly at me. Some of us have been overcomplicating projections, confusing the team, creating unnecessary stress. Laughter, polite and thin, rippled through the room. He waited for it to fade. Our models should inspire confidence, not chaos. He continued, Rowena, your last forecast suggested we'd fall short by 6 million if trends continued. That kind of negativity doesn't align with leadership goals. I straightened in my chair. It wasn't negativity. It was arithmetic. His smile tightened. And yet, the board interpreted it as alarmist. We need to work on tone, not just numbers. From the corner, Jenna from HR scribbled something in her notebook. She avoided my eyes. Ethan gestured toward her. Per HR's recommendation, your salary will be temporarily frozen during this review period. Just procedure, nothing personal. The words fell quiet in the room. Nobody spoke. Someone coughed. Another pretended to check their phone. The silence felt heavier than any insult. I looked at Ethan. You want optimism in a spreadsheet? You can color it pink if it helps. But it won't change the math. He leaned closer across the table. You need to learn when to stop talking. That line hit harder than the freeze. Not because of what it meant, but because everyone heard it. I could feel their discomfort, their relief. It wasn't them. When the meeting ended, I packed my notes slowly. Ethan's assistant held the door open with a forced smile. Tough day, she whispered. I didn't answer. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, the same documents open on my personal drive. I scrolled until I found a folder labeled Legacy Clauses. It hadn't been touched in years. Clause 6.7 sat there, gray and quiet. I highlighted it once, then leaned back, the hum of the refrigerator filling the room. I wasn't angry yet, just awake. The morning after the meeting, Ethan called me into his office. The walls were glass, but the blinds were half-drawn, the illusion of privacy without the risk of witnesses. He gestured toward the chair across from his desk. "Sit down, Rowena. I want to talk about yesterday." His tone was soft, almost apologetic, the same one he used when he wanted something. I stayed standing. "You already did enough talking." He smiled like I'd confirmed a point for him. "You're passionate. I admire that. But passion can look like resistance when it's not directed properly." "Resistance," I said quietly. "I was doing my job." He leaned back in his chair, the leather creaking. "Off the record, here's where we are. HR is asking whether you can align with leadership goals. If not, they'll expect me to recommend termination. I don't want that for you." The words hung there, half threat, half performance. I kept my eyes on him. "You froze my pay and called it mentorship. Now you're threatening my job and calling it compassion." "Come on, Rowena," he said, lowering his voice as if we were conspirators. "This company's changing. We need people who adapt. You're brilliant, but you make people nervous, especially the board." He glanced toward the desk beside his, where Madison Clark, his protégé, sat arranging folders. She didn't look up, but she was listening. She always was. I folded my arms. "So this is about succession planning. You clear me out, she gets promoted, and everyone stays comfortable." Ethan's smile didn't waver. "Don't make it personal. Just work with us." I nodded once. Understood. For a moment he seemed satisfied, mistaking silence for agreement. I let him. As I left the office, Madison looked up and gave a small, practiced smile, the kind that came from watching someone win before the game even ended. Back at my desk, I opened my private drive and scrolled to the same folder I'd found the night before. Clause 6.7. The words blurred for a second before settling into focus. It wasn't anger anymore. It was precision waiting for purpose. I first wrote Clause 6.7 6 years ago, buried in a pile of post-merger cleanup documents. Back then, I was just another mid-level analyst trying to untangle the wreckage left by two departments that had merged without talking to each other. The new CFO wanted everything rewritten: risk assessments, loan guarantees, exposure tables. I stayed late for weeks, rewriting policy until the numbers finally spoke the same language. That was when I saw the loophole. 3 subsidiaries were cross-funding one another with rolling guarantees. If one defaulted, the others could collapse in hours. So I drafted a clause, a quiet safeguard to keep the system from eating itself. Clause 6.7. In the event of technical default, the firm reserves the right to seize and redirect assets across dependent entities to prevent systemic loss. It was a firewall, not a weapon. Legal glanced at it, nodded, and moved on. No one read the appendix. They never do. The day it passed, Ethan congratulated me. "You just saved us from a potential audit nightmare," he'd said, slapping my shoulder like we were teammates. I'd believed him then. Now, sitting at my desk years later, I opened the archived version from my personal drive. The language was still the same, dense, dry, invisible to anyone looking for glamour instead of structure. But hidden inside was something new: potential. If a renewal lapsed without proper authorization, the clause would treat it as a technical default and reroute the funds to protect the company's solvency. In plain English, it would make whoever caused the lapse responsible for the fallout. Ethan had inherited that responsibility when he took over my portfolio. I highlighted the clause, line by line, then closed the document and locked my screen. The office around me buzzed with the ordinary rhythm of Thursday afternoons, phones ringing, keyboards tapping, Madison laughing too loudly at something Ethan said. None of them knew that a forgotten line I'd written 6 years ago was still alive inside the system, waiting for a signal to wake up. And this time, I wasn't planning to stop it. Friday mornings used to mean progress reports, coffee runs, and forced cheer. That morning, it meant silence. I sat at my desk before anyone arrived. the soft glow of the compliance dashboard reflecting off the dark glass of my monitor. One loan file sat open, vendor line C2117, a modest $2,300,000 credit facility under Ethan's supervision. Its renewal date blinked in yellow. All it needed was my signature. A single authorization line buried in a digital form that nobody outside my department even knew existed. Normally, I would have signed it without thinking. That was my habit, keeping the system breathing while everyone else played leadership. But not this time. At 8:42, Ethan stopped by my cubicle. "Morning," he said. "You good after our talk?" I looked up. "Perfectly fine." He smiled. "Glad to hear it. We'll be expecting the quarterly renewal package by end of day. Don't overcomplicate it." "I won't," I said, and watched him walk away. When the office settled, I hovered over the digital signature field. The cursor blinked. Waiting. I clicked Save as Draft and closed the window. No confirmation, no completion notice. The system would now register the file as pending, not processed. By 9:15, the first soft flag appeared on my dashboard: renewal pending unverified signature. By 10, it triggered a secondary alert to the audit queue. By noon, it was invisible again, buried under the day's routine reports. I sent no emails. I spoke to no one. The afternoon passed in quiet fragments, the faint echo of laughter from Madison's desk, the distant murmur of Ethan's voice in a call he thought was private. At 5 o'clock, I shut down my screen. The dashboard blinked once before going dark, its silent timer already counting down from 72 hours. Walking out, I passed the glass wall of Ethan's office. He waved goodnight, distracted, confident everything was under control. I nodded back. The system didn't need me anymore. It was already awake. The first email arrived at 9:17 on Monday morning. Subject line: renewal authorization, missing vendor line C2117. The sender was an external auditor I had never met, copied to legal and risk. The message was short, polite, and fatal. Please confirm that the renewal signature was properly filed by authorized personnel. I read it twice, then closed the window. 10 minutes later, Ethan appeared beside my desk, face pale. "Did you see this audit notice I did?" I said. "Then why didn't you respond?" His voice cracked between anger and fear. "They copied legal. This looks like a compliance failure." I looked up slowly. If the system didn't record my signature, it means the renewal didn't finalize. That's not failure, it's procedure. He rubbed his temple. "Rowena, stop being literal. Just fix it. Send them something. I'll take a look," I said, and turned back to my screen. I didn't move. He lingered, waiting for the sound of keys. When there wasn't one, he exhaled sharply and stormed back to his office. At 11, HR pinged me for clarification on renewal responsibilities. The message came from Jenna, still careful to sound neutral. Ethan mentioned there may have been a miscommunication. "Could you confirm your process?" I typed a single line: "All renewals require a verified digital signature from authorized personnel." Mine was not applied. Then I hit send. By 1 o'clock, another notice appeared on the dashboard: secondary discrepancy flagged pending audit escalation. From my seat, I could see Ethan pacing his glass office, phone pressed to his ear. His gestures grew sharper with each call. Madison hovered nearby, pretending to take notes. At 3:40, legal added a third alert: cross-linked accounts pending review. 3 red icons pulsed on my screen like small, patient heartbeats. I logged out without replying to anyone. The system was already doing what it was designed to do: record, verify, escalate. When I walked past Ethan's office on my way out, he didn't look up. He was too busy explaining to someone on speakerphone that it was all just a misunderstanding. He was right about that. In a way, it was. By Tuesday morning, the panic had a rhythm. Phones rang longer before anyone answered. Doors stayed half closed, and the legal team stopped smiling when they passed my desk. Around 11, I heard Ethan's voice rise through the thin glass wall of his office. "You're telling me there's no override." A pause, then another voice. "Marla, our general counsel, cool and precise. Clause 6.7 predates our current policy stack. It's locked to the original author's credentials and a physical key. Without both, we can't deactivate it." Ethan's reply came out tight. "So we just wait for this thing to implode." Marla sighed. "We need her cooperation." I sipped my tea, the sound of their muffled argument steady in the background. Minutes later, Ethan appeared at my desk. "Rowena, it's going to reset your access credentials." "All right, just a precaution." "Of course," I said. He gestured to Greg, the head of IT, who hovered awkwardly behind him. "Run it." Greg typed rapidly on his tablet. After a moment, his brow furrowed. "Reset rejected. System flagged it as unauthorized. Access ownership locked." Ethan leaned over him. "Then override it." "I can't," Greg said quietly. "The override route requires biometric verification from the original signatory." Ethan turned to me. "That's you, isn't it?" I stirred my tea. "Apparently so." For a moment, he just stood there, his face blank except for the twitch in his jaw. "This isn't a game. Rowena, you're putting the company at risk. The company's safe." I said, "Clause 6.7 ensures that." He started to speak again, then stopped. The phone in his hand buzzed, lighting his face with a harsh blue glow. He read something, swore under his breath, and walked back toward his office without another word. I minimized my dashboard and watched the log feed scroll quietly. Unauthorized reset attempt recorded. Access breach denied. Timer sequence active. The system didn't care who was afraid. It only followed instructions, and it was already past the point of return. Friday morning, 8:55. My laptop lit up with an urgent calendar invite. Emergency compliance review mandatory attendance. The subject line was familiar now. Clause 6.7. When I joined the call, the faces were already there. Ethan, pale and sweating, Marla from legal, Jenna from HR, and two executives I'd never met. The silence in that virtual room was almost reverent. Marla began, her voice clipped. "Rowena, thank you for joining. We need clarification. Clause 6.7 has been triggered across multiple linked accounts. Can you confirm whether this was intentional?" I unmuted. "The clause functions automatically." "It's not about intent." Ethan leaned forward, eyes tight. "Rowena, please. If this continues, the firm faces catastrophic audits. We need your credentials to override the lockout. Just give me the key." I looked at him, steady. "The key isn't yours to use." He tried to soften his tone. "We can fix this. HR will restore your salary immediately. Even add retroactive compensation. No one has to get hurt." "Someone already did," I said quietly. "You just didn't notice." Behind him, Madison hovered out of focus, whispering something. Ethan waved her off. "This is not the time," he snapped. Then, turning back to me, his voice broke. "You're going to destroy everything we built." I clicked share screen. One slide appeared white background, black letters, clause 6.7 status active. Nothing else. Ethan blinked, as if staring into a mirror that refused to flatter him. "You're doing this to prove a point." "No," I said. "I'm doing this because you taught me how disposable I was." Jenna cleared her throat. "Rowena, if we resolve this, HR can negotiate." I interrupted. "You can't freeze the architect and expect the structure to hold." No one spoke. The clock on my screen read 8:57. I ended screen share, then the call. The meeting window vanished, leaving me alone again. Outside my apartment window, the city carried on, unaware that somewhere downtown, an entire network of accounts was seconds from rewriting itself. At 8:59 and 50 seconds, The dashboard on my screen flickered once, then steadied. Lines of text scrolled across like a quiet heartbeat. System verification complete. Auto-execute sequence engaged. Somewhere across town, in the firm's main server room, Clause 6.7 was doing what it was built to do, cross-referencing every dependent account, flagging discrepancies, sealing transfers. I could picture the notifications hitting one by one, every alert finding its way into Ethan's inbox. At 8:59 and 55 seconds, my phone buzzed. A message from Marla. We've lost access to 3 linked portfolios. Is this your system? Before I could type, a second message arrived from HR. Ethan Cross suspended pending internal review. Do not engage. Then came the sound I had been waiting for. Not dramatic. Just the soft chime of completion. Auto-execute finalized. The line on the screen turned from amber to green. For a moment, the world was still. I closed my eyes. When I opened them, the final alert appeared in the corner of my screen. Retention clause payout approved $780,000. The clause I had written years ago to protect analysts from wrongful termination had finally done its job. No one ever revoked it. I leaned back in my chair, feeling the weight leave my chest like a door unlatched after too many locked nights. Outside, traffic moved with the same steady rhythm it always had. My phone rang once more. The caller ID flashed Ethan Cross, but the line cut off before I could answer. Seconds later, another notification came through, this time from legal all accounts under review. Immediate audit initiated. I turned off the screen. The machine had spoken. There was nothing left for me to add. The quiet after impact isn't silence, it's balance returning. I sat there, breathing in the stillness, the hum of the computer cooling beside me. No smile, no victory, just release. By Monday morning, the panic had already cooled into silence. The company's internal memo arrived at 7:45 sharp. Ethan Cross has resigned for personal reasons. We thank him for his contributions. The phrasing was neat, bloodless, corporate. I arrived at the office with a small box and no intention of staying. My badge still worked, though the system would probably revoke it by noon. When I stepped inside, Madison was at her desk, pretending to type. She looked up and hesitated. I heard about Ethan, she said quietly. I'm sure you did. She opened her mouth as if to ask more, then closed it. I didn't blame her. Some stories were better left as rumors. In my office, I began packing. One notebook, a framed photo of my mother, the mug Ethan once mocked for being too serious a color. The rest I left behind. Paper could belong to them, not the work. Jenna from HR stopped by, her tone polite but careful. We're processing the transition paperwork, she said. You'll receive your final retention payout this week. Already did, I said. She blinked, uncertain whether that was possible. Then congratulations. I smiled faintly. That's one word for it. When I carried my box through the hallway, heads turned, but no one spoke. The whispers would fill in what facts couldn't, that the woman they'd written off as inflexible had left with the cleanest record in the building. 2 weeks later, I started at a smaller firm downtown, one that still believed in balance sheets more than slogans. My new office was modest, overlooking a line of brick warehouses converted into startups. On the wall behind my desk hung a single framed page, Clause 6.7, printed in black and white, edges crisp under glass. Clients sometimes asked what it was. I always told them the same thing, a reminder to read the fine print. That evening, as the city lights flickered against the window, I adjusted the thermostat near my chair. The hum of warm air filled the quiet space. For the first time in years, it sounded exactly the way I wanted it to.